boy is back. We are here with another episode of the Round One podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's been a while since we did a video game related episode. Um, so my thoughts were to do one today. Um, I think we haven't done one about a month or so, maybe longer. But this one I wanted to dedicate kind of like a half and half. So the first half, I was thinking I would like to talk about the current video game remakes, the era of remakes that we've been in as of recently. Um, and then the second half, I would like to maybe discuss the boom that I guess The Last of Us TV series has created, um, and some other video game series that would translate really well into TV shows or movies or some other type of property, anime, whatever it may be. Um, so yeah, let's get right into it. Um, so the most recent remake that has dropped was the Resident Evil 4 remake. I, for one, just to get started, I, for one, am not a big fan of Resident Evil 4. Um, I enjoy the Resident Evil series. Personally, 0 all the way through 3 and Code Veronica X even. I adore those games. When 4 came out, I was in high school. I think that was 2006, something along those lines. Because I remember my freshman year playing it on my GameCube and also going to my friend's house. We'd go there with a couple friends and um, we would play Resident Evil 4, hang out, you know, do things that high school kids do there. Um, and even when that game came out, I was kind of like on the fence. Um, I enjoyed moments where the action was super intense and suspenseful, and you're like, "Oh man, this is great." Um, but it I felt like it was starting to lose some of what Resident Evil was, and that was like the creepy, slow, atmospheric pace of the game. Um, just walking down a hallway with the sound of a like tree branch banging against a window or something, or the wind fluttering like a piece of uh I don't know, like a glass or something in a out of a broken window or something and it falling onto the floor. Like the slow atmospheric creepy essence of the game was kind of lost in Resident Evil 4. Um and it was replaced with a very suspenseful action um like high intensity feeling that wasn't really familiar within the series, and I think kind of set the pace for the series going forward. And that's why we got games like Resident Evil 5, which was horrible, Resident Evil 6, which was probably the worst game of the entire series. Um, I think Resident Evil 6 was the game where everybody was kind of like, yeah, this franchise is dead. Like, Resident Evil is dead. And then 7 came out, and everyone was kind of like, man, you guys couldn't stray further away. But Resident Evil 7 was actually really good. I enjoyed Resident Evil 7. And then, to a lot of people's surprise, I think it was very good. But initially, when it was announced, everyone was kind of like, what did you guys, like, what are you guys doing? You guys, first, you started making all these action shooter games. And now, like, you're making a first person, like, version of that. What are you guys doing? Um, but when it released, it was actually very good, and I was very surprised. I enjoyed 7 rather much. I haven't played 8. I still have not played 8. Um, I played all of the remakes, Resident Evil 2 remake, Resident Evil 3 remake, and I loved them. I thought they were phenomenal. Um, Sorry, just taking a sip of coffee. And I think we started to get back into that Resident Evil um like era that the series had strayed away from. Um, that slow creeping atmospheric uh environment of the game that we were missing for so many years. We kind of got back in those Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes. And I thought they were going to start making more remakes like, oh, Code Veronica. Maybe they redid 0 or 1 in the new engines. Um, and I think even the new ones had a little bit of that, you know, Resident Evil 4 esque kind of feel that people liked. And I think it was a good balance because it wasn't 100% like the original games. They did a good way of they did a good job of modernizing it, and I think including the things that people liked in games like Resident Evil 4 and 5 and 6. Even though I don't know how you could find anything you like in 5 and 6, um, and implementing it into the remakes in a good way. But now we have the remake of Resident Evil 4. And like I said, I was never a fan of the Resident Evil 4 series. I enjoyed it. For me, they were like a 7 out of 10. 7 or 8 out of 10. Not 10 out of 10s like everyone has been saying since the game came out. So I wasn't super excited about a Resident Evil 4 remake to begin with. Um, I played the demo. They released a demo on Xbox and PlayStation and I think Steam. I'm not sure. But they released a demo. I played it, and it was pretty good. Um, I enjoyed it, but I still remember the the feel of Resident Evil 4 from playing that demo. I still all of those like thoughts started coming back to me like in the first couple of minutes. I'm like, "Oh, this is really good. Like I'm enjoying this so far." And then you get to the village, and the village is so like just claustrophobic, and there is a million unrelenting zombies, and they take a lot of shots to die. And you're kind of standing there and you're like, this is a little insane. And this is what this game felt like, where it wasn't as scary. It was like overwhelming. And that was one of the things that I didn't like about Resident Evil 4, where in the first, it's one zombie and you're like, oh fuck, and you're like freaking out, and it's because there's like a fear almost setting in because you're like using these crazy controls and you're like fumbling over them, and then you know uh you're like trying to aim and line the shot up, and then you're reloading and you're backing into a corner and all this stuff, and it's just one zombie. um and that was like a cool uh tactic, I guess, that they employed um to like elicit like a fear response in you. But in Resident Evil 4 it was more of like a overwhelming nature where like I wasn't even, and I know that the normal game isn't going to be like that. In some ways I think it is, but for the most part I don't think it will be. Um but the game was almost like there's 1,000 zombies coming you at once, and it's not fear. It's like, dude, let me get my breath. Like this is insane. Like this is ridiculous. Like why why is there so many zombies here, and why does it take a million shots for them to die? Why do they keep coming? What is going on? Like this is not even scary. Like this is just ridiculous. Um and I think that's where like the shift is in modern Resident Evil, well, not modern Resident Evil, but when Resident Evil became modern with Resident Evil 4. And I'm noticing that it's still present in Resident Evil 4. And I guess for you to change that, it would be for you to change Resident Evil 4 in a sense. You would be changing like the root of the game um, by changing that aspect of it. So going into it, I'm not very excited. I'm definitely going to play it, um, but I don't know how excited I am. So I just wanted to look over some reviews because I know that a lot of people out there are probably interested as well in some of the scores the game has gotten. Um, and so far, the game has released to rave reviews. The game does not come out for like another 6-7 days, I think, like almost a week. Um, but it is released. The reviews released, not the game. The reviews have released to stellar scores. Like right now, like trying to remove, like weed through all of like the outlets that are just run by their respective gaming companies like PlayStation Life and Xbox Life and all that stuff that give every game that ever comes out on their platform a 10 out of 10. Shifting through all of those, I'm on Metacritic right now, so I'd like to stop at like an IGN, and IGN gave it a 10 out of 10, 100%. And their like small blurb says the Resident Evil 4 remake is the series' most relentless, exciting adventure, rebuilt, refined, and realized to the full extent of its enormous potential. So I guess that means that the game is even better than the original in their opinion. So that's good news for people who are very excited, for big fans of the original series. I'd like to see GameSpot. So GameSpot gave it a 10 out of 10 as well. Raises the bar for what a good remake is, and at the same time preserves Resident Evil 4's legacy as a genre-defining experience and one of the greatest games of all time. Okay, so that's also, very promising for a lot of the fan base. But what I also like to do when I look at reviews, I like to look at the positive reviews, and I also like to look at the negative reviews to see what people say. Because sometimes people just say stupid shit in the positive reviews, like, oh my god, the color of this guy's coat was amazing. It's like, okay. And then you have guys in the bad review that be like, uh, I don't like the color of his coat, so it's a negative 10. Okay. So I like to just pull the pieces out that kind of make sense from each of those uh, types of reviews. So it's got a lot of really overwhelmingly positive reviews so far, which is good. So the negative reviews that I see here are from Dual Shockers and Silicon Era. Dual Shocker says Resident Evil 4 Remake asks the bold question of whether you can perfect what many already consider perfection. While fairly competent at its basics, Capcom's latest remake has the least creative energy of its series revivals, leaving you wanting for much more. In an attempt to make Resident Evil 4 with more modern sensibilities, has left behind what made the original game so great to begin with. I'm hesitant to click on these full reviews because when you read these full reviews, it winds up being like 6 pages long. But what I gather from this small blurb is that with the remakes of 2 and 3, they kind of changed the game from the top down. It was remade in a completely different engine, and not to say that this wasn't. This was remade in a completely different engine. But I think what they're saying is that the game was already phenomenal as it was. The original was like close to a 10 out of 10 as you can get. In their opinion. Me personally, and I'm, different than most people, I personally don't think that it's 10 out of 10, but that's just my opinion. Who am I? But in most people's opinion, they think it's close to a 10 out of 10 as possible. And if you're not changing much of the game, then what's the point of even remaking it? because 2 and 3, they went into this full third person almost camera angle. They removed things, they added things. Um, it it was a completely different experience for the most part, but with all of the same, like, you know, things you remember from the original, all the things you loved about it. But it seems like this is almost like a remastering in their opinion. Um, but it was sold as a remake, like a reimagining of the series or something. But to them, it's almost like a remaster. Because there, according to this, there's no creative energy, and you just kind of want more from the game than what they're giving you. Um, and then Silicon Era had mentioned that by updating it, it left behind what made their original game so good. Um, so it's seems like there's a even though there's a overwhelmingly positive reception to it, it seems like there's some divide among some of the core fans, and that's with any game. Um, this year alone, we're going to deviate from Resident Evil 4. I'm going to play it at some point. I know that many of you out there will probably play it as well and enjoy it. I think I'll enjoy it too. I'm not going to love it, but who knows? I might. But I'm definitely going to play it. But to deviate from the Resident Evil 4 topic and go more into remakes, 2023 has kind of been a year of a remake so far. Um, we've seen a lot of remakes. Um, from the year opening with Dead Space, the Dead Space remake, which I played. And if you're a fan of the podcast, I do have my playthrough of the series on on our YouTube. Um, so you can go check that out as well. If you are so inclined, you can watch the entire playthrough. I think it's 3 videos that I have on there of the whole playthrough from live on Twitch. Um, so you could go check that out yourself. And I loved it. Um, Personally, I think it was almost better than the original because of the modernized graphics. Um, they worked out some of those like gameplay mechanical hitches and things like that. I think it was a more complete game this time around than the original. And I think for the most part, as long as you don't fuck up a remake, you will get a better product because you'll know everything you went wrong on. You have feedback from the fans, you have feedback from the devs, the team, everyone that worked on the game. So you kind of know what worked and what didn't, what went wrong, what you can fix. And I think 2023 is proving to be the year of the video game industry finally realizing how to make a remake. Because years past, we've been getting remakes that were fucking terrible, or remakes that just there wasn't even really a need to remake. You know, that there wasn't much of an upgrade. Um, you know, you had the Chrono Cross remake, which I loved Chrono Cross, but that really wasn't a remake. That was just almost like a slight retouching of the game. Um, you had the Mass Effect remakes that they were peddling as remakes, but they weren't. It was the same thing as like Chrono Cross. It was just a slight visual upgrade. Um, Same thing with all the San Andreas games that came out. Um, even Diablo 2, the Diablo 2 remake, it was the same thing. Like we got to a point where they were doing too much with remakes, and trying to change too much to like them being like, okay, let's not change too much and let's just do a slight, you know, a slight upgrade graphically. Then they got to a point where people were like, what's the point of you doing this? And then I think they finally have started to figure it out this year with remakes. Um, you know, you have the Dead Space remake. You had the Metroid Prime remake that came out, and the Metroid Prime remake got great reviews too. Resident Evil 4 so far has great remakes, great reviews for the remake. We're supposed to be getting this year Prince of Persia: Sands of Time remake, which I love the Prince of Persia series, so I'm hoping that it's good, and I'm hoping that they take note from these other remakes that came out this year and kind of follow the same pattern. We're getting a Silent Hill 2 remake, which I hope they do the same thing as well. A Witcher remake, same thing. We had the I don't want to call this a remake because it wasn't the GoldenEye 007 remake. I don't think that was a remake. I just think it was like slightly upgraded visuals, and then they just kind of ported it to modern consoles. But I don't think that's a remake. But then we look at some popular remakes from years past, like we had the Final Fantasy VII remake. The Final Fantasy VII remake, I'll be honest, I loved the Final Fantasy VII remake. The first, like, 80% of the game. The first 80% of the game, I was like, man, this is fucking great. I'm loving this. While it's not the original product, they did a really good job of modernizing it. A really good game. I'm enjoying it a lot. And then they kind of took their own liberties with the story towards the end of the game, where I was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? They kind of went in their own direction and deviated from the source material and started doing their own thing. And that's when the game started losing a lot of its luster for me. Like, the game would have been a 9 if it continued, on the same trajectory that it was going. And then by the end, I was like, this game is like a 7 after what they just did. It would have been close to a 10. I would have been like, man, this is fucking great. I would recommend, if you're a fan of the series, still playing the original, but at that time I was like, I would recommend this first, and then if you really loved it, going back and playing the original. Because the original, you might just get completely, out of your element in it, playing it for the first time. If you never played a Final Fantasy game, and you play a game from 25 years ago, you're kind of like, this game sucks. Like, the graphics are bad, or like, blah, 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 blah. Like, you know what I mean? People come up with their own, reasons for not liking shit. So, like, that's just how it goes. They would have said whatever. But if you were a first time, your first game into the series, I would have recommended that. And then going back, if you really loved it, going back and playing the whole original game. But then they started changing a bunch of shit and doing their own thing. And that's when I got completely taken out. And I was like, this is terrible. Whatever you're going for right now is not good. You should have never did this. I'm not going to say exactly what it was for people who haven't played it. But it was not good. So yeah, there's also the Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core remake that came out recently, the reunion. I played that, all of that. I enjoyed that. I thought it was great, and that still too wasn't really a remake. It was kind of just like an upscaling of all of the graphics and like 3D models and stuff, with some new like soundtracks and voice acting and all these things. But other than that, like, it wasn't really a remake. It was almost more of a remaster. But I enjoyed that, and that was last year. I thought that was good. I would give it like a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10. That was a solid game. But the other thing is, with these remakes, I feel like we're getting to a point where we're almost remaking too much. Where I think if we... There goes my phone. Sorry about that. I think if we continue to head down this road of remake after remake after remake, a lot of these companies are actually going to start just remaking a lot of old games, even more so than they are now. And I think that kind of gets us out of our creative element, so to speak. Um, I think the video game industry thrives on creativity, and when you start to just remake the same old things and keep kind of doing what you're doing and keeping up with the status quo, it starts to become like the movie industry. And now that's why the movie industry is kind of failing. And you have a lot of these like, um, famous directors like Tarantino, Scorsese. Um, I think even Denzel, who's an actor, not a director, came out and said that like cinema is kind of dying because honestly, like the all of the superhero remakes, I mean, all the superhero movies. And I think that's kind of what's happening with remakes. I think if we continue to do these remakes and rely on the success and the name of these really older, popular, amazing titles, we're gonna start losing a lot of the the creativity in original IPs, and studios are gonna stop wanting to do original IPs, and then we're just gonna get like fucking Assassin's Creed like 35. And at that point, like I haven't played an Assassin's Creed since Odyssey, I think it was. I think I played Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I played it for like 6 hours and then never touched it again. And it's like a 50-hour game, I feel like. It's a long game. And I only played it for like legitimately like 6 hours. Because before then, I only played last Assassin's Creed I played was Brotherhood, I think. I think it was Brotherhood. And Assassin's Creed 2 and Assassin's Creed Brotherhood were, I think, the best of the series. Um, Phenomenal games. Love Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood. Fantastic. And then I tried Odyssey, and I was like, this isn't even the games that I remembered. What are they doing? Um, and I kind of just lost it after a couple hours, and I was like, I don't really enjoy this. I don't think Assassin's Creed should be open world. I don't know what they started doing here, but this wasn't a good idea. For me at least. I know a lot of people enjoyed Valhalla. A lot of people enjoyed the Egypt one, Origins, I think it was, and Odyssey. A lot of people enjoyed those games. I personally didn't enjoy them. Um, I still think two and Brotherhood are the best iterations of the series. But I think when we go down this road in the video game industry where you're just doing remake after remake after remake, and you start getting lazier and lazier, and your creativity starts to get stifled, and then you wind up in this rut where you have this popular IP and then you just burn it into the ground. And I think we need to get away from that because that's what's happening in the movie industry. You have all of these Marvel movies, all these DC movies, superhero movies, Disney movies, Disney TV shows, Star Wars, all this stuff that just keeps getting pushed out and shoveled down our throats like every year to the point where it's like, oh, okay, man, like I kind of had enough. Like I'm getting like fatigued. I'm getting fatigued on everything, and I don't really care to watch this, consume this media or this product anymore. Um, so I think we need to get away from that. So before we get into TV series, I'd just like to talk about the Diablo 4 meltdown yesterday. The beta had released. This Diablo 4 beta had dropped. I have the beta. I wasn't able to play it, but I don't know what Blizzard and Activision thought was going to happen, especially when they had a promotion where it's like, oh, everyone can play early just if you order a KFC sandwich. Everyone's like, what? I seen online on Reddit that people in other countries were using VPNs to get into the American KFC like system. Like they were like hacking the KFC mainframe, and they were placing orders for like sandwiches because you would either have to use the double down sandwich or you would get the some type of other random KFC chicken sandwich, and you would get the code. So they were just spending like the $6 or whatever and placing an order for pickup at a random KFC somewhere. And they lived in like Europe. So like they had, because it was only available, I think, in US and Canada. So they were hacking into with VPNs into the American KFC and placing orders to stores and paying. And it'd be like, oh, $5 for pickup for this one sandwich. And then they were getting their beta code and they were just not even getting the sandwich. So one, like you're creating like this massive amount of food waste. And like two, you're gonna fucking destroy the servers because this was a promotion that was not meant for you. And you're gonna fucking destroy the servers. Uh so it was bad yesterday. There was like super long wait times, the servers were crashing, guys were making all of these characters and they were getting like maybe an hour or two in and everything was crashing and they were losing their whole builds. So like one of my friends and me personally, I couldn't get in. But one of my friends, he was in queue for 87 like minutes. It was like he was just sitting in a queue for over an hour. It was like an hour and a half that he was sitting in a queue just to get into the game. Then he got into the game and the game crashed after like 5 minutes. And he was like, wow, dude, I literally just wasted almost 2 hours of my life just sitting here. And then there was a lot of people, like I said, who got into the game and were playing for like an hour or two, built this character, started questing, getting these items and all this stuff. And then the game crashed. And when they got back in, all of that data was gone. And they lost everything. So the servers were just completely overloaded. And I don't know what Blizzard and Activision thought was going to happen when they got this whole beta situation started. They should have anticipated even more of an influx than they were expecting. But you know, I don't want to deviate too much from the original topics. I just wanted to share this thought that it's crazy that happened. It's not surprising, but I have a feeling like this beta might be like barely playable like this whole weekend. Like this is the opening weekend, the early access beta or whatever, and I feel like it's it's barely going to be playable for a lot of people. But like I said, I'd like to go into the TV series with the success of The Last of Us TV series on HBO Max. I'd like to talk about some other video game series that I would like turned into, well, video games that I would like turned into into TV series or movies or some type of property. And I just want to say before we start, I think The Last of Us TV show is phenomenal. I have yet to see the last episode, but I plan to watch it soon. I've seen every episode prior. The TV series for me personally is probably like an 8.5, 9 out of 10. I thought it was great. I'm really curious to see what they do with season 2 and if they follow the game. And if they do, I'm really curious to see how the fan base responds because I think the fan base is going to be very, very, very fractured. So just looking forward to more Last of Us. I think the series was great. I love that HBO picked this up and did a really good job. And I think you need a studio like HBO that really cares about its quality to make these video game TV series. When you have somebody like Amazon or Netflix and things that just create a lot of shovelware almost TV series, it isn't really conducive to the success of the show when you have studios that don't care about the product or the quality, that just kind of are like a quantity over quality production house like Netflix like originals, there's like a million of them. They just keep throwing them out and throwing them out. So like if it hits, it hits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So they don't really care. Kind of same thing with Amazon. So I think a studio like HBO that like has a very high standard for like quality control and stuff needs to do video game series because they need to be done right. Because if they're not done right, they're not going to be good, and it's only going to continue this kind of perception that video games can't be turned into movies and like they're horrible, they can't be turned into anything. And I will say that I don't think any video game should be made into a movie. There should be no video game that's being well, Super Mario, yeah, because there's not much of a story there. Super Mario is more about the 3D platforming and stuff like that. Other than that, it's like, oh, go save the princess, and then how it happens, who cares? There's not really a story. Those games, things like that, can be turned into movies. But series with very rich, deep lore that span the game spans hundreds of hours, you can't turn that into you can't condense that into an hour and a half, thing. Imagine trying to take all of that happened in Last of Us so far and condensing it into an hour and a half. It's not possible. You can't do that, and that's gonna one hurt your product. So people are gonna be like, "This shit sucks" because it's terribly disjointed and it's fucking horribly paced. It's just not good. It's not cohesive, and it's also gonna hurt it's going to continue the same rhetoric where it's like, oh, video games can't be turned into movies, blah 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 blah, and then nobody's going to do it. So I appreciate HBO for going out there and turning, a video game into a really good series. So a few video games that I think would make great TV series, because I would not want to see these as movies, are the Red Dead Redemption series. And I think a lot of people thought the same thing. The Red Dead Redemption series is phenomenal. There's a lot of Western products out right now. You have like Yellowstone, and TV Westerns have been a thing for decades. Decades. You have like Tombstone, Unforgiven, all of the old Clint Eastwood films, The Good, the Bad, everything, dude. There was a whole era in cinema about Wild West, the Wild West era. So you have a lot of stuff to go on. Spaghetti westerns, all that shit. And then you have a lot of series. Like I said, Yellowstone, Hell on Wheels, I think was another one. Deadwood, I think was another one. Westworld. There's a lot of like Western themed TV series even, and I think since HBO already had experience with Westworld, I think a series like Red Dead Redemption would be amazing if done by them. And I think they would have the actual care and like quality control to make a really good product out of it, and probably be able to make it go for several seasons, combining the first game and the second game. I think it would be very, very good. Another video game series that I think would be very good, but hard to translate. I think very difficult to translate because you would need the creator there to help with this process. And I think it would take very, very long to do it. But I think if you got it done right, it would be absolutely fantastic. And that's Metal Gear. I think if you had Metal Gear done the right way and turned it into a TV series, kind of like almost a 24, not like a CSI or anything like that, has some similar aspects to 24. Uh, some elements from other series like Prison Break, things like that. Oz, these elements where it's like very deep, complex characters, and just an espionage backstory and setting, with a lot of those elements. I think it could be done really good, and you would need Kojima to be a major part of it. And that would be the very difficult part because he's a perfectionist, and it would be a very, very arduous process to, I think, work with him. And a lot of these studios would have a hard time giving him a lot of free reign. But I think if this studio was there to kind of hone him in, but gave him most of the creative reign, and was just like, do what you want to do, but we're gonna be here to kind of like keep you in check, then we're good to go. I think it would be really good. Another series, and with this series, I actually heard that this was what Amazon was trying to do. And the series is Mass Effect. So before the Halo series that they made, and I think it was Amazon that made that, but I'm not sure. Maybe it was Paramount. maybe. I don't remember. But before the Halo series kind of dropped, it was supposed to be um Mass Effect, but for some reason they couldn't get the rights to Mass Effect. So then they decided, oh, let's just do a prequel series to Halo or whatever. Let's just do something that has nothing to do with the Halo video games and just have kind of Master Chief in it. And we'll call it Halo. But originally what I heard was that they were trying to get Mass Effect to do a Mass Effect TV series and everything fell through. And then the last minute they were like, Halo, Halo, Halo. So like that in and of itself, it was set up for failure, and they should have known that because the product was never intended for Halo anyway. It was kind of like a last ditch effort, and then they shoehorned it in, and that's why it sucked. Um, and then a lot of people blame Halo, like, oh, it's Halo's fault. No, it's not. It's the studio. The studio didn't even want to do a Halo. They had no intention of doing a Halo product, and then everything fell through, so they just fucking went for it. Um, Another series that I think would be very good, but is has been done wrong so many times. A series that has been done wrong constantly is Resident Evil. Resident Evil has been a series since like 2000. The movies, TV shows, everything, the entertainment aside from the video games, the entertainment property has been a thing for over 20 years, and it has been terrible almost every time. In my entire life, I have never seen a single good Resident Evil movie or TV show. And I think if you're a fan of the series, you agree with me. I don't think you have seen a really good Resident Evil TV series or movie your entire life. And that's insane that that franchise has been around that long and there hasn't been a good product. And they continue to make more. And they're not good products. So I think after seeing the success of Last of Us, I'm hoping that the Resident Evil franchise is like, you know what? The Last of Us stayed very close to the video games. I think we should do that. I think if we do that, there could be success because I think all the studios that were using the Resident Evil IP didn't want to stick close to the video game because they probably didn't think it was translate. So I think this gives them a shot to maybe reinvigorate the franchise, the Resident Evil movie TV franchise. And this is the thing about a lot of these games. I think there's a lot of games with amazing worlds, amazing lore, and all of these little things that would not necessarily translate to any TV show or a movie, or it would just not translate to the television screen or the movie screen. You have the Dark Souls games, the Elden Ring. I think Elden Ring is a phenomenal video game with super deep lore, a rich world, amazing characters, artwork, and everything, and it would look amazing to see done on the silver screen. But I think it would be terrible no matter how you do it. There's just certain games and things that should stay games and should not be a television series. Another series that I think could be really good, and it'll either be hit or miss, and it all depends on how you do it, because you could follow some of the games, but the games are also so large that I don't know how you would focus solely on what story, what arc of the story, maybe who knows what you would focus on. But like the Elder Scrolls series, I think would be difficult to translate into a series. I think the Elder Scrolls series in general is phenomenal. But I think it's so large and there's so much lore and there's so much story going on. It would be really hard to jump into the series at a random point, it would have to be very, very good. And it would have to be at a super critical point that's kind of like maybe I guess what's going on in the in Elder Scrolls Online or something before all of the major events of all these other games. I I I don't know how they would do it. Um but I think it would be too jarring and too like confusing for a lot of people, but it does have a lot of like high fantasy elements that like people really like in Game of Thrones and things like that. It has a lot of those elements, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, all that stuff that I think people enjoy. Um but I don't necessarily know how that would translate. Um I kind of feel the same way about Fallout. I think it could be done. These are series that I think could be done really well, but may not necessarily translate. Um, and it's Fallout, Elder Scrolls, things like that. The worlds are so rich and unique and full of lore and have great stories going on and all this stuff. They're more of an experience than like something that can be viewed or watched or ingested. It's something that you have to experience, and that's the case for a lot of video games. Um, they're more experiences than stories. Um, and that's kind of hard to translate an experience into a TV show or a movie um, without losing some of that. Some other series, just really quick, that I think would be great: LA Noir, um, Half Life, God of War, starting from the original God of War. Um, I think there's a lot of stuff and a lot of games out there that would translate. Bioshock. Um, we already have The Witcher. There's a lot of really, really, really great video game series that would translate, and I'm hoping that because of the success of Last of Us, we start to see a lot of more of these shows. Um, I didn't want to make this episode too long, so we're gonna close it out here. We're almost an hour in, um, so it's been a while since we did a video game episode. So hopefully this satisfies some of you guys out there. It quenches that thirst for some video game topics, um, and some more relevant video game topics. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Um, so like I always say, like, comment, subscribe, show us love on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, show us love on Spotify, all the other socials. Um, your boy streams every 5 days a week. I stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Shaquille_oatmeal_RO. Go follow me on Twitch. The Twitch links are also in the links on the YouTube and the Spotify and Apple Music if you're so inclined to join from there and watch. Like I said, I do stream 5 days a week, play retro games, play recent games. If you're here for this video game podcast and you want to shoot the shit, you want to call me an idiot for what I said, come through, hang out, watch some games, chill. That's what it's all about. But I appreciate you guys. Love y'all. Thank y'all for listening and continuing to support. I appreciate all of you and love y'all. Peace out.